Orpheus started as 3 buildings made in November 2024. It was an experiment of constructing not with the grid but more freely building around one of the new shop pieces. This became the subject of a question. Why would these buildings be so detailed and colourful? The answer? Art and the people who make it. Graffiti and street art is an interesting medium to me. There's a hierarchy of graffiti on what you can go over the top of. Tags can be painted over with throw-ups. These are usually of a couple colours with an outline. Then next is the piece. These usually involve more complexity and take more time. And the highest of them all is the mural. I find these ethics and rules interesting in a subculture of art, sometimes deemed as vandalism. So what would happen if these artists had a place outside of the law? What would that look like? Radio Caroline was a pirate radio station that operated from a shipping vessel in 1964. It was never illegal due to the fact they transmitted their signal from the middle of the ocean outside of any national jurisdiction. This combined the ideas into one for me. What if there was a derelict structure in the middle of the ocean that welcomed artists to create? The name Orpheus came much later, drawing from the bard of the same name from Greek mythology, used to symbolise the power of music and poetry. Which brings me to the soundtrack. The music featured in the project was mixed together using DJ software called Traktor, and a mixing deck I've had since 2013. I've played live in the past, but I'm definitely more of a bedroom DJ now, mixing for fun, finding interesting combos and double drops. And this solved an interesting problem. The ride was close to being in sync with the music, but just a tad too slow. So through the software I was able to adjust the beats per minute, making the on-ride more in time with the music. The idea started with the challenge of how to hide terrain in what should be the ocean. This was solved by the testing of Joshua Amos and the maps of Cheez-Its and CKM car design. By lifting the terrain up higher in the air, you can create a horizon line that solved the effect of water as far as you can see. The oil rig started with rapid prototypes, which is something I've started doing more often. It's simply trying to get the idea laid out as quickly as possible, knowing that you can add detail later. It's usually why my projects start with fluorescent yellow walls, because it's better to find out that an idea isn't going to work 5 minutes in, rather than after an hour of detailing a small section. I got inspired by browsing Google Images, Pinterest, and ArtStation. Environment design by artists like Kota Kuriki helped with the initial design language, whilst stock images on Google helps with the finer details of existing oil rigs and structures, which I started building. As part of the rapid prototyping, I made standalone sections, including a ladder with a safety cage and a harbour crane that you may have already seen pop up in Rudy's Hanseatic Dreamland. It worked well, and it saved him a bit of time. And that's another thing. If you find a blueprint that will save you time or fit perfectly into what you're doing, use it. These are all the blueprints I used to put together Orpheus, and it saved hours. When people make a boat that fits, I'll use that rather than burning another 10 hours to make one. Using blueprints is working smart, with the caveat that your efforts should be additive. And let's talk about criticism. Getting criticism from the right people can improve your creations, and being able to give it constructively will make you valuable to others. The initial layout of this ride was significantly shorter when I showed it to my brother and his other half. Firstly, she gives good critique, and her thoughts were, what is this coaster's unique element or thing? Because at this point, the only answer I could give was, it's on an oil rig. There was a conversation in which we ended up coming to the conclusion that the start of the layout was missing something, and whilst the Hyperia first drop has appeared under many other layouts, I chose to join in and make one of my own. And recently I've found myself speaking with other creators in Discord servers like BroNation and Wonderlands, where I've managed to give some constructive criticism to them, and I think it would be useful to share a couple thoughts on that as well. Ask questions starting with what or why. Why have you made the wall this colour? And as a creator, the best outcome is if you know why. Because it's sometimes not just the wall colour. Has this wall been here long enough to discolour? Could it become dirty? Why is it this material? The more questions you can answer like this, the more you have asked yourself whilst building. And finally, a fun fact about this project. Whilst it started in November 2024, this got put on hold whilst I finished and released Hive Mind first. There was a good reason for this. Whilst we had the screens in-game from launch, the ability to show custom images arrived later, and with this, PC players could import their own files onto them. This became available towards the end of Hive Mind, which is how I traced the sunglasses with art pieces, and after this I returned to Orpheus with the ability to recreate pieces of art that I wanted to pay homage to. Throughout the build, there are works of art from Banksy, 1UP and Space Invader. Whilst the tile patterns of Space Invaders were easy to create, the work of Banksy and 1UP required more tracing and line work to bring to life. And the point of tracing these into the game rather than just creating a wall texture and putting the image on it is that it keeps this project cross-compatible with console. There will be projects that I make which will require screens, but this one doesn't have to. But the way I used these pieces were additive. I used the features they gave to improve what I had done, not replace. I've spoken again to creators who have mentioned how they've gone back to their finished areas on larger projects and replaced sections and old bits with the newly added ones. And firstly, the prospect of working on a large project is a bit foreboding to me. During Planet Coaster 1, I only finished one park-sized creation. If you find you're still doing more work on something that at one point you may have said was finished, the takeaway should be to use the new features and pieces we get to add value, not replace it. Because again, sometimes embracing the challenge or a limitation will make for more interesting ideas. Thanks for listening, and take care.